Hello, good morning. Welcome to Gaming Insight Daily for Thursday, June 26, 2025. I'm Steve Saylor. This is your daily show of, well, sometimes daily show at this point, of gaming news, accessibility news, or updates about my life. I finally have hot coffee in my Star Trek tea Earl Grey hot mug. This is my first cup of hot coffee in multiple days because I finally have air conditioning again. Oh my goodness. I do not wish no AC on the worst person in the world because it is brutal. I've been lethargic. I've had brain fog. All I kept thinking about was just how extremely hot I was the entire time. And not in the I just realized what I said. I meant in temperature, not necessarily in looks. Although, if you do think I'm hot, let me know in the comments below. I'm kidding. Anyway, no, I'm so glad I finally have AC back. It just feels so good. So anyway, I'm sorry I missed a past couple of days. It's just there's just no way I could be able to concentrate and be able to do a video. So I'm glad to be back again doing a show. The topic I want to talk about today, I wish it would be like a nice topic or a good topic or a positive sort of topic to kind of jump back into. But this one had hit over the past, it hit within the past day or two. And I ranted about this a little bit on Blue Sky and on Instagram. And it just has stuck with me ever since. And yes, I know it was during kind of the heat wave of just and I was just cranky and hangry and all that in between, but it's still stuck with me, and I feel like it's something I need to talk about. And it's in regards to this Instagram post posted by Hideo Kojima, and this is in regards to Death Stranding 2 reviews. It's currently sitting at a 90 Metacritic score, according to this image, based on 103 critic reviews. And it's literally just a poster of Death Stranding 2 with a large, a lot of scores from gaming outlets that are either 100s or 90s, 95s. We got a 92 in there. We got an 80, some maybe 80s in there. But with sort of the thing that it's an accolades poster, and we see these accolades posters all the time. We even see accolades trailers of just people raving about the game and how good it is, and it made me really wonder, really just to kind of pare it down to one question: what the hell am I even doing here? I know that sort of sounds like facetious, and it sort of sounds like a kind of an oversimplification of a question. And I'm not even talking about the broader sense of what are we doing, or what am I like? I'm literally wondering, what the heck am I even doing? I've spent the past 7 years talking about accessibility in video games and encouraging people in the media side to review games from with accessibility in mind, or talk about accessibility when it's needed, especially for a game that is as applauded as this. I will say this up front. Let's just start off with this. Let's start off with just more specifically Death Stranding 2. I have no ill will towards Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions. I don't. I really don't. I think Hideo Kojima is by far one of the most prolific video game developers in the industry today. And I would put him up there. If you had to think about the Mount Rushmore of game directors or game auteurs, he would absolutely be up there. I will not disagree with anyone who says that. I may not have been able to play his games before, but I understand the impact that he's had on video games. a lot of games have been influenced by his work. And games that we enjoy today have been influenced by his work in some part. And so I think that, and I would even say narrowing it down to Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2. There is an amazing story and theme in that game that, yes, with all the wild and out there things that are in this game, there is still a story to be told in that. And I applaud Kojima for being brave enough to even tell it. He has a very unique mindset, and he has a very unique artistic mindset that honestly shouldn't be judged. He is definitely is an artist, an artiste, if you will. The thing that I am upset about is the lack of accessibility in that game. There is just there may be some for some disabled players. That's why I always say, I never really say you shouldn't this game is just not it's not designed for disabled people in mind. I can say that, but I always encourage people, try it for yourself, because disability is a spectrum. I can't say that every disabled person can't play this game, because that would be wrong of me to say that. But there was a lot of missing accessibility in this game that I felt was just some of the basics of accessibility wasn't in this game, nor was it in the first one. And I did a review on that. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description down below. If you want to check it out, if you haven't checked it out already. And I get that I'm the only one of the only people to review games from an accessibility perspective, and I think I might have been the only one to review Death Stranding 2 from an accessibility perspective. But it kind of brings up two different things that I'm kind of upset about, and I apologize if this rant is not necessarily in order. It's more of a collection of my thoughts right now, and I just wanted to at least talk about it, because I have not been able to talk about this other than just through social media posts. But there's two things that come up. A, the lack of accessibility in reviews, in just regular reviews from major outlets like IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, Kind of Funny, blah, blah, blah. And then there's also the accolades to a game that is obviously going to be in the conversations for Game of the Year, and the consistency of so many Game of the Year contenders being inaccessible to disabled players. So let's talk about let's talk about that aspect first. So, in all intents and purposes, Death Stranding 2 is going to be nominated for many Game of the Year awards. It's just gonna. With the amount of accolades this game has already gotten, and the game has barely even come out yet, it's gonna be definitely in talks for conversation, especially around when you think about Game Awards and all that stuff. It's gonna be in the conversation. I would probably guarantee that Hideo Kojima is gonna go up on the Game Awards stage. Jeff Keighley's gonna be beaming with pride and behind him or something, and he's gonna accept probably multiple awards for Game of the for Death Stranding 2. What I will guarantee he won't be winning is an accessibility award. That's just saying. But this is a pattern that has been happening in the video game industry for a long time. No matter how much we bang the drum of accessibility across the industry, and I've heard time and time again from people telling me that my work is important, that our work is important, that accessibility is important, accessibility is a good thing, accessibility is something that we should be talking about. But I'm now at a point where actions are speaking a lot louder than words right now, and there is no action being taken for talking about accessibility, unless it's in included as part of an inclusivity thing, whether it's a disability day or month or what have you. Accessibility is only talked about when it's trending. And for the past several years, I have been trying to beat the drum of I would love to be able to see reviewers like take accessibility into account for their video games. Now, I know that's a lot easier said than done. I know, and that's a huge expectation to be added onto those who review games for a living, because it involves technical like knowledge of disabilities and what is needed and what isn't needed for those with disabilities. So I understand that there's a bit of an education there that's needed, but not once have I heard or seen reviewers from media outlets take the time to educate, to learn how to review games from an accessibility perspective. Nor is it a mandate from any editor, game editor, or editor-in-chief at any gaming outlet. Now, I know that's I'm mostly talking about like the big ones, like IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, Video Game Chronicle, I know, and I know that also it is a smaller a group of outlets that are doing reviews on a regular basis to have an audience to be able to sustain them, to be able to keep doing these reviews. And I'm not even bashing necessarily, like, I'm not saying, oh, game journalists are bad. If you think that's what I'm saying, you basically are watching the wrong type of video. And I just encourage you to click off of this, because I am not saying game journalists are bad, because there's a lot of game journalists that I am like inspired by. There's a lot of game journalists that I am friends with, that I enjoy their work. But I am seeing a pattern of accessibility is just not asked about, not talked about, not mentioned, not included in any coverage unless it's specifically for accessibility. The last time I ever seen any outlet actually actually try to cover something for accessibility was when PlayStation was inviting people out to be able to check out the Access controller. I know this because I was approached by 2 outlets to be able to cover it. And I actually had to turn down one because I wasn't the right person to be able to review it. And I encouraged them to be able to send someone else. And unfortunately, they just couldn't be able to make it because of just the problems of traveling with a disability. So when I was asked a second time to do it, it was actually from PlayStation themselves. So I went and I covered it, but I also asked several folks who were there, who were my friends, who were there to cover it for other, like, to be able to talk about it. But that's the only time I've ever seen any editor, any gaming outlet take an interest in wanting to be able to cover accessibility. That's the last time. And what was that, like 2 years ago? But since then, there hasn't been any coverage of accessibility except when it's trending. So to go back to the Game of the Year conversation, there have been so many Game of the Years, Game of the Year contenders that have won or been nominated that have had next to zero accessibility in their games. It's a pattern we've seen over the past decade of games being nominated for Game of the Year that have barely any accessibility. The only times that have actually happened where a Game of the Year was in the same conversation as accessibility was The Last of Us Part 2, and that was 5 years ago. And they're applauded for it, and people are like, they're like, oh, this is the best game of a generation. These games are like the best of the year, or the best of the, like, it shows how much video games are important. But no one ever asked disabled players, can you even play it? Oftentimes I'm the one who has to kind of like either to give the reviews, and I'm not like, and there's other disabled creators out there that are also covering video games from an accessibility angle, and I'm so happy that at least that there are folks that are out there that are willing to do that. But oftentimes like I would have thought that at least by now, after the success of The Last of Us, that we would have had some Game of the Year conversations that said, oh, this one actually had a decent amount of accessibility. It may not have had a full amount of accessibility like The Last of Us Part 2 was, because I think that the industry wasn't ready for that just yet. We're still not at a point where a lot of games are fully accessible like that game. However, have been games that I think like should be included. I think probably I go back to like 2023, where Mortal Kombat 1, Diablo 4, Street Fighter 6 was talked about in that sort of regard, and it actually had decent amount of accessibility. That's why I say like 95% of Game of the Year conversations generally don't include accessibility. The 5% that do, no one's even talking about the accessibility of that except for disabled people or people within the accessibility community. And if they are talked about, like in certain things, oh yeah, no, it's also great for accessibility too. And that's it. I hear so often accessibility is important for the industry, but do I see anybody actively talking about it other than disabled people or other than people in the accessibility community? No. Because it's just not part of their everyday, day-to-day lives. And unfortunately, like the only, like I've there's a common joke that was told by a friend of mine, Tara, who said who has a joke of, oh, tell me what is the quickest way for me to be able to care about accessibility? And she goes, okay, I'll break your hands. And the other person says, what? She said quickest, not best. And unfortunately, that the kind of like it is funny, but it kind of is. There is truth in that. The only way to know about or care about accessibility is if you become disabled yourself. We talk about anybody can become disabled at any given point in their lives, and even talk about like temporary and even situational disabilities that prevent you from being able to play games to the way that you want. Accessibility affects everybody, and yet the only times it's ever talked about is either in an inspirational aspect, or it's trending, or there's something to be upset about accessibility, or there's a controversial take on something that we have to chime in on because it is accessibility related, like yellow paint. And I'm tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired of being. I feel the more people talk about accessibility, the louder the conversation can be, the louder that our voices can be. And I feel like that within the past several years, those voices have been drowned out to the point where I'm shouting at the rooftops about accessibility and I'm losing my voice. And it's not to say I'm ready to give up on accessibility or anything like that. And that is part of the advocacy sort of aspect of anything. There are times where it feels like that it's just like whatever you're doing is just not enough and no one cares. And that's kind of where I'm sort of feeling at right now. But it just pains me to be able to see a game that should be the whole point of Death Stranding 2 is about connection, is about connecting to the outside world, to a world that is hostile, or to a world that is dangerous, or to a world that is just inaccessible to people. And in a game and no better way to be able to talk about the sometimes for some disabled people, the plight that they've had to go through over the past, like their entire lives, not being able to leave their homes, not being able to work, and just trying to connect to the outside world. I mean, the pandemic kind of really highlighted that. And disabled people have been saying, like we've been telling you for years, this is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then once everything kind of went relatively quote unquote back to normal, Who's left behind? Disabled people. Same with accessibility in video games. When we were talking about it, when people understood why accessibility is important, and yes, there are studios that are trying to be able to include accessibility in their games, and I still applaud them for it. And I think that there is still movement in that regard. But at this point, we're celebrating games that don't include accessibility, and all it takes is just for one executive to be like, "Well, Elden Ring's popular. Why can't we just make that? They don't have accessibility. Who needs that?" And like, obviously, it's not important. That's all it takes, and then all that accessibility sort of knowledge goes out the window. Especially with even just the attacks on DEI across the entire globe, and accessibility is a part of that. Here's the thing: accessibility is so not included in DEI. It's not even included in the acronym. It's diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. It's DEIA. And yet accessibility is supposed to be a part of that, and it's not even included in the acronym. That's how much accessibility is just not cared about. I'm just tired. I'm tired of games that are coming out that no one cares about accessibility. They don't think about accessibility. They don't think about other people and I don't know. I'm going around in circles. And then the second part of it is the education of media outlets and talking about accessibility. Right now, there are only 2 people working in the media side when it comes to that deals with accessibility exclusively. 3 technically. Yeah, 3. I would say 3. Myself, Grant Stoner, who's an accessibility journalist, and Laura Kate Dale, who does accessibility reviews and her show Accessibility on YouTube, including her accessibility showcase that just happened in June. We're the only 3 at least prominent. And I'm not to say that there's not. If you are watching this and you do cover accessibility, please let me know in the comments down below. I think I've seen 1 or 2 of you actually posting there, and I apologize, I haven't looked at your stuff yet. But please let me know, and I'll definitely check out your stuff, because we definitely need more voices out there. And not to say that I'm just I'm out of touch of that side. It's just I just don't I'm just. There are, and I know there are other folks, and this is why I don't like to talk about specific names, because I take everything all back. I'm not talking about because I know that there's other folks that do accessibility stuff in there. There's within the community, but at least that are known within the media. And I say the 3 of us because we're the only ones that are known on the media side outside of our accessibility community, who have good relationships with higher ups people at IGN or GameSpot or Kind of Funny, that kind of thing. And we've been trying to be able to push for more accessibility coverage. The fact that Grant does a regular column for IGN and does amazing work. He's an award-winning journalist because of that. Laura, basically, with her YouTube channel and her accessibility showcase, and me with these videos and me doing reviews on accessibility. And there are others. I'm not gonna that. I apologize. I take that back about the 3. There are definitely others. There are plenty others. Forgive me. My brain fog is still out there. It's just the thing that kind of comes down to when it comes to other media outlets about including accessibility. I get the fear of not being able to cover it because you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to get you don't want to be bombasted about or troll or drag through the coals of the accessibility community for something you did or said wrong. I get that. I get that fear. It happens a lot. And the thing that I kind of basically bring it down to is that if you're afraid of getting it wrong, ask people in the community. What is it like? If I'm talking about this, is this okay? Is this not okay? All you have to do is ask. Like, it's not hard. Like, part of advocating for accessibility is education. And we do educate on accessibility. I do it on a daily basis with this show, talking about accessibility. And all you have to do is just ask about how to cover it. But has anyone really ever asked? Not really. No. And are they like accessibility is barely even a footnote in any review. I legit think I was the only one who ever even mentioned the word accessibility when it comes to Death Stranding 2. And that's sad. And that's really sad. At least as of this recording. I think I know of one other person who's going to be mentioning accessibility in their review, which I will be shouting out when that goes up. But it's just sad. It's just like, again, I think it comes down to what I've just been ranting about, is that we've had we were at our absolute loudest when it comes to accessibility conversation. We're on The Last of Us Part 2. And then over the course of the past 5 years, that conversation, at least in the public side or in the media side, has died down to basically almost nothing, to the point where I'm losing my voice. I started doing this particular show on my YouTube channel, like changing around how I do YouTube content, because the more regular you post about it, the higher up it gets into algorithms and in people's news feeds, so that at least more information, more accessibility information can get out there. It's one of the reasons why I do this on a regular basis. To the point where I'm running myself ragged trying to be able to put out almost 5 videos a week talking about accessibility. And but it just seems that like no one cares. And not to say that not like on the development side that no one cares, because I'm hearing more and more studios doing accessibility for the first time. I love that. I love hearing studios doing that. I love hearing more developers who are doing that and adopting it. And there are doing more accessibility. But the thing that I'm so sad about is that even when there's games that come out that do have decent amount of accessibility, it's barely ever mentioned at all. And sometimes that information is needed to be able to show developers, be like, this is why it's also important to include accessibility and to talk about accessibility, because people are interested in it and reviewing it. And when no one's interested in talking about it, then there's not a lot of outside push to be able to do accessibility, unless there's basically more accessibility champions within studio. And that's a community that's hard to foster, because you have to have other developers and higher ups to be able to be on board with it. And if they don't see the importance of accessibility based on coverage or public things, and I know that people may disagree with me on that reviews barely matter. The studio heads don't read or watch reviews or what have you, but I'm sure they're paying attention to certain aspects, and I definitely think that accessibility is a part of that. I'm sure it's been a part of a conversation at some point, but we need to talk about more accessibility, because if we don't, like it happens at a slower pace. If there was more demand for accessibility, we would have a lot more games with accessibility by now. That may be a hot take, but that's kind of how I'm feeling at the moment. Hot take, considering I just had no AC for the past several days. Anyway, I hope I explained it well. I know I kind of talked around in circles, but I'm just, excuse the rant for today, but I hope that makes sense. I would love to be able to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this whole conversation? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to be able to hear it. And I know this may not be probably the most viewed video of my YouTube channel, and I get that. It's gonna, like, I'm just saying that now. I can guarantee there's probably not going to be that many views, but I just need to get that rant out. I need to be able to vent. So thank you for allowing me to be able to vent. I appreciate it. If you got this far, I do appreciate it. Take care. Have yourself a great day. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow with a better, more positive news story and not necessarily a vent or a rant. Take care. Have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.